Hello and welcome to Sustainably Talking Live. We've got a fantastic guest with us today, Ignatius, who's an AI guru, and you'll be hearing from more from him in a moment. Plus, I've got two extracts from interviews I recently conducted from Ember with their latest electricity review and a really fascinating discussion on vertical farms. Hello, and good to be back. So before we get cracking, I just wanted to show you this image where I saw on LinkedIn this morning about looking at the share of renewables within Germany. And in 1993, German electricity incumbents said renewables could never provide more than 4% of the country's electricity. Now, if you follow technology, you will know that predictions like that, they're commonplace. You know, I think it was IBM, wasn't it? The chairman of IBM said the worldwide demand for a computer is probably about 5. So people make these predictions. And I sometimes think one of the reasons is because people don't think exponentially. They think arithmetically, which I think is the Ray Kurzweil thing. I think Ignatius, that he always says that. I think he says that when we were hunter-gatherers, if a leopard was chasing us, its speed wasn't accelerating exponentially. It was just coming at us fast. So we think arithmetically. Intellectually, we understand exponential, but I don't think we do intuitively. And I think we underestimate technology as a result of that. And Ignatius and I are going to be talking shortly about AI and the speed with which it's changing, which is absolutely breathtaking, but it's exponential. But I think it's also the same with renewables as well. And I'm going to be showing an extract of an interview I did a few days ago with the author of a report from Ember on electricity, and it's fascinating stuff. But again, it highlights how this stuff is changing exponentially, and I think people are underestimating it. Anyhow, it's enough from me. I thought we'd have a chat. Ignatius and I are going to have a brief chat, and maybe you could just introduce yourself and pronounce your name properly, and don't tell me off too much for spelling your surname wrong. That should be an H, not a J at the end. I hope I'm not in too much trouble. But yeah, so if you could just introduce yourself briefly.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be on the show. Yeah, it's Ignatius Rautenbach. It's German, obviously. So I mean that name and last name gives a lot of different countries different problems. But that's why I either probably go by Iggy. It's the easiest one for people to remember and go by. I'm founder and CEO of Connect. I'm fractionally employed by quite a few companies. A lot of my focus is, like you said, the cross-border innovation, studio building sovereign AI products. So that's the main focus. AI is such a broad field and it's moving so fast. I have to focus only on that slither.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, maybe you can give us a sliver of wisdom this morning. So just briefly tell us what's new in AI, what's new with LLMs. I believe there's been some 2 major releases in the last very, very, very recently.
Yeah, we have the cadence of release of new LLMs has just sped up. We had like one every now and again. We now have multiples from multiple companies being released, one after the other. And in the last 2-3 weeks, we've had Anthropic release their new Opus 4.7, and just on the back of that, we had GPT releasing 5.5, and then on the back of that, we had DeepSeek version, the new version coming out from that, which is an open source one. And I believe we'll see on the back of that a few others being released within the next 2-3 weeks as well. So it's an exciting time to be in this type of technology where things are moving forward so quickly. We don't see the huge jumps we used to see, like between a 3 and a 3.5 for GPT. But it's still, there's a lot of work going on in the background into how to make these models more usable in everyday life, and especially in corporates, because obviously they need to make money. So it's in their best interest to release models that do certain things better. And I believe it's in the corporate space where that's what they're focusing on. So to make that whole field a lot better and easier to use it, the entry.
Okay. So, but I mean, it's the pace in which these things are upgraded, which is breathtaking. It wasn't that long ago when ChatGPT came out, and now they're talking about 5.5. You know, we get frustrated with the iPhone being updated every 12 months, but that's nothing compared to the speed of upgrades in AI.
No, nothing. And also the other thing to bear in mind is that one of the first fields that came directly in line with these AI releases is coding. So the very people who are building the new AI are using the tools to build their tools faster. So the cadence is changing drastically. And as we go along and these models are getting better, the releases will getting more, and all the technologies and the frameworks around that will be released far quicker. I mean, what is available right now is absolutely incredible to the average human.
Yeah, and you're telling me that one of the more interesting features of the latest ChatGPT is its ability to create graphics. I think that's where you see the big innovation occurring. Is that right?
I wouldn't say it's the big innovation, but it's definitely a problem because there's so many big innovations. So it's one of the big innovations. One thing that we have as humans, we relate a lot if we see visual, and the way that we are using it currently is if you have a huge amount of data, say a book or something like that, you can put that whole book in and say, okay, create me one visual or infographic of this book. And something that would have taken graphic designers days or you know, like a whole day or hours, and there's brainstorming as what to put where, it will just give you, this is what you can look at, and it will give you an idea of the core concept of the whole book. I find that incredible. So we can find new ways of interacting with data because we have access to a GPT, which is remarkable. We can interact with data in a different way that we've interacted with it for the last, you know, as long as we've had information that we can read. So it's just changed.
And I think it is fascinating because I don't want to burden you, Iggy, and the people watching this with my problems. But I'm not very good with graphics. It's just not where my strength lies. For me, I look at something, that looks pretty good to me, and other people say, that's rubbish, Michael. What are you doing? And all of a sudden, I'm discovering. So I've been torturing myself trying to master Canva for a few years, and all of a sudden, I just told ChatGPT a few instructions, and it comes out with something amazing. And I think one of the things that we could never have predicted a few years ago was that the jobs that AI seems to be threatening are designers, are musicians, are coders. That wasn't predicted, was it?
It's the other way around. We said those are the ones that will probably be lost, the arts industry, and it's just gone the other way around. And like, I mean, yeah, it's very different. It wasn't predicted this way. We didn't expect it to do what it does. We're particularly bad at predicting. I mean, that's one thing we know. Just watch the stock market, or you know, when a war starts, we're just not good at predicting.
Right. Just had a question. How do you see AI and vertical farming working together to reduce energy demand while still scaling sustainability? Now, I think that gives me a good segue into introducing the vertical farm interview that I did. This is quite a long interview, and I'm just playing a segment from it today. And I will be playing some more from that interview in future weeks. And I think that the whole AI thing is actually, as it ties in with vertical farms, is really interesting. And it's one of the reasons why vertical farms are becoming viable, whereas they weren't viable a few years ago, actually. But anyway, why don't I? So I recently spoke to Robert Carlsson, the founder and CEO of Green City Farming. Now, Green City Farming is a vertical farm which focuses primarily on salad. I think it's the low-hanging fruit of vertical farms, if you excuse the pun. Not that salad is a fruit, unless it's a tomato, of course. But I'm told that the opportunity to grow all kinds of crops within vertical farms is perfectly realistic. Now, I started by asking Robert what the difference was between controlled environmental agriculture, CEA, and vertical farms.
So control environment agriculture is when you are based basically in an indoor farm. You don't have any lights whatsoever from the sun, but you have artificial lights from LEDs, and you control everything: humidity, temperature, airflow, and how much sun through the LEDs they will have. Vertical farm is that you just in that control environment, you have multiple layers of growing instead of one traditional layer that you have in an open field, for instance.
I thought that as we've got Robert on the show, I might as well ask him a little bit about green city farming and what's special about green city farming. What's its solution?
Farm is, as we call it, a true vertical farm. If you look on most of the vertical farms out in the world, I will say 99% is on a stacked layer system that you have like a close to a shelf system. You have a deep water system. For instance, you have like a tray with water, and then you have some floating on it with the lettuces or plants aside. As you see in our farm, we have a true vertical farm from the ceiling down to the floor, and the benefit with this is tremendous when you look on operational costs. So, for instance, we don't have so much problem with extracting heat to every layer that you have in a stacked layer system, which means that you need to blow out the heat. That's number one. Number two is that you need to irrigate the water, and you need to make the water move. Otherwise, you will get a lot of bacteria in a stacked layer system. So our solution, having it true vertical, is that the heat is just extracting up to the ceiling, and then we suck that out. And then, of course, the water we pump and the water flow is by nature taking care of itself by gravity. So that gives the root system a tremendous benefit, that it feels much better and it thrives much better, which makes the difference that in our system, if we will connect our true vertical farm to a stacked layer, we will have the same water flowing through both systems, the same seeds and plugs been put in the same date. You will have up to 20% better growth in our system, which is a huge benefit if you look on revenue.
So when I looked at vertical farms quite a few years ago, actually, I thought what a great concept. And then when I looked into it, the maths didn't really make sense. It just didn't seem to justify them. But I believe things have changed a lot since then. And so I asked Robert exactly how things have changed. Okay, so about 10, 11, maybe 12 years ago, I can't remember exactly how long ago it was, I remember reading an article in The Economist about vertical farms. And up until that point, I thought, this is really exciting technology. And that article disappointed me a little bit. It was saying that vertical farms require a lot of electricity, and that if you were to use solar panels, the amount of land that you would need to lay for solar panels, you might as well just have a farm and forget about it being vertical. Now, I'm assuming something's changed since then. Well, what's changed?
Well, a lot of things changed, of course. In the beginning, as all tech develops, it's very expensive in the beginning. Typical here is LED lights. It was super expensive, and I wouldn't say they were useless, but there was not the quality that we have today. So the price has gone down the last 10, 15 years with 95% on LEDs, but the quality is very close to the sun, basically beneficial for the plant. So it's a total different kind of quality. And I would say the LEDs is the biggest impact. Then, of course, everything else that you need to have in the farm also has made an impact, and is the fifth generation or 15th generation of ventilation, AC, whatever you are using in the farm that you need to have. Everything has gone down in price, and of course, the efficiency is totally different today.
So I had a bit of an epiphany when I was talking to Robert. I suddenly realized vertical farms are a bit like batteries in a way, because Solar, as is well known, doesn't generate electricity when it's dark, and wind doesn't generate electricity when there's absolutely no wind. But then nature's a bit like that. Plants have to survive all sorts of conditions, including when it's dark, including when it's cold, including when it's too hot. So actually, with a vertical farm, or with any controlled environmental agriculture, actually, you can dovetail the conditions to when it's optimal for solar and wind.
Crisis and prices is of course very depending on being an indoor farm, being dependent on artificial light. But also, I mean, you can if you can understand how the plant grows, then you can mimic when does it really need light to thrive, and when doesn't it need. And number two, normally when you, even in our system, if you look on our wall system, we light up basically the whole wall system. If we can also concentrate the light only to where the plant is, and when it's growing, we also extract more and more lighting, so it grows the area, the surface grows the same when we are lighting or putting the LEDs on that spot. That's number one. Number two, you can also choose, like for instance, we have developed our own, let's say, electricity platform, which is controlling each and every single light in our farm, and is connected directly to the spot price of electricity in Sweden. So we know in our system in Sweden is that we know in advance, 24 hours ahead, exactly every hour what the price is. So what we're doing with this platform with AI, also helping to choose the cheapest price with the parameters that we need to have. So if it needs to light for 12 hours or 14 hours or 16 hours, it will always do that, but it will do it in different kind of light recipes when it is cheaper, but it will always achieve the 16 hours.
Well, I hope that was interesting. What I found fascinating, one of the things I found fascinating about that is how the revolution in LED lights has made vertical farms viable in a way that they weren't. But what they did at Green City Farming is they actually had an LED light above every plant. Every plant had its own little mini sun. And they know through the use of AI how to dovetail it so that they make optimal use of electricity. The cost of the electricity they use to power the farm varies at different times of the day depending on different circumstances, and they know what the price is going to be in an hour's time, in 2 hours time, in 6 hours time, and the AI can therefore arrange it so that every plant makes maximum efficiency of makes optimal use. And also the lights are specific to the plants, so the whole farm isn't lit up, it's just the lights above the plants. It's really quite clever stuff, I think. Anyway, Iggy, so tell us, what jobs are going to be safe? Yeah, we talk about, no, reword that question. We said graphics designers, coders, and musicians are being threatened by AI. But if that's what you are, if that's what you're good at, does that mean there's no hope for you? So if I was a modern day Mozart, or if I was Paul McCartney just starting out, you know, if you ever watched the film Amadeus, they were saying how Mozart, it was like he was taking dictation from God, and Paul McCartney woke up with a tune of Yesterday in his head, didn't know where it came from, it was just there in his head. And I think there's a similar story about Let It Be as well. Is AI going to just do away with all of that then? It's just AI going to do it? But if that is what you're passionate about, if you really love art or music, does that mean are you sorry, forget it, mate, or is there still hope for you?
Look, the music industry has been difficult for a couple of years, but in art, one thing that AI is not that good at is it can't create something remarkably new that has never been before, because of the way that it gets trained. So mathematically, it needs input from somewhere. So the people who are truly creative, they will always be creative, and human beings like to follow people. And those people who are really, really good will be there. So if you're one of those, it's no reason to stop. What it will do, though, is the lower end of the people will definitely, there will be shifts. But what we are seeing is that people are branching out. So if you were a graphic designer, yes, your normal everyday job where you used to make money is maybe this. That's now a lot easier. Like what you're doing is you spend all this time trying to get to know Canva. And before Canva, it was a lot of Photoshop and Illustrator. And there's a lot of specialists in that. And Canva came along and really turned the market upside down. And now you can chat to somebody to a thing, and it gives you this remarkable photograph or remarkable illustration. But the brilliant people use those tools. And it's about augmenting what you do and not sticking to, okay, there's no way this will not change my life. Yes, many positions and type of ways that you work will get changed. But it's how you augment it. Because if you're a brilliant designer, you will still get brilliant work out of an AI, and you'll just get better at it. If you're a very good researcher and writing, I mean, you're passionate about writing, it might have taken you a year to do proper research. Now it can take you weeks. It can take you a week to do proper massive amount of research, get it together. So does it take away your job, or does it make you better at what you're really good at, as the actual writing? My prediction is the people that are really good are there's going to be more need for them. So in music, you'll have more and more regional type ways of recording that it will kind of go backwards to go forward. Writing, you'll need more people that write. I think the lower end writers will find it very difficult because their jobs are just going to be replaced. So either you're going to augment what you do, or the competition is going to be a thing that can output unlimited text. But the good writers and the people who are really good at presenting, like this podcast, for instance, it's not just going to disappear. And if it's not good enough, yes, it will be taken over. And if it's good enough, you will have people watching its original content. So originality is the key thing there for me. I can't see that going away. The human in the loop. And the other point that it's not been, that I've not made, is a lot of the replacements that we are seeing in the news about people letting go for AI is from these large corporations that's actually repurposing the money to put into AI infrastructure. Those people didn't lose their jobs because an AI replaced them. It's more, we need $8 billion to put into AI infrastructure. So we are willing to lose this money here from these people and put that in. So were they lost to AI operationally, or were they lost between a decision to put it into a new infrastructure? And a lot of the stuff that we're reading in the news is definitely people lost their jobs because of they need more money for infrastructure.
Okay. So, but I'm going to have to correct you somewhere though, Vicky. You're talking about how this podcast couldn't be produced by AI. Well, here's some shocking news for you. I am in fact an AI avatar. I'm not actually a real person at all. You wouldn't have known that, would you? But the question is, can AI tell jokes? So for me as a writer, I always used to like to punctuate my writing with a little bit of humour. So I've got one for you. What noise an oyster? Do you know what noise an oyster? Any ideas?
No.
A noisy noise an oyster. I always like that joke, and I've always thought, okay, maybe it's not the funniest joke you've ever heard, but I don't think AI could do that, could it? Or maybe it could.
From a technical perspective, if you analyze shows and you know the type of people that go there and you know what they laugh at and you can measure the noise, and I presume you can copy what's being written, it can and might get good at it. Is it something that they will put a large amount of money towards to mimic? I don't know. I don't think so. I think a lot of the money that's being spent at the moment is to get into corporates. So that's probably where people need to look at, is what are the big players investing in to get into. And it's definitely, they need to get into corporates, because corporates, that's where the money is. They need to get into fintech. So they're going to be pouring a lot of the infrastructure into that. There might be some side casualties, but the money is being poured into delivering a specific niche.
Okay. Eric, thanks for your question. I think I just did discuss that with Robert. What I'm going to do is I will contact Robert and ask him to answer your question. I think the truth is that they need multiple wavelengths, and the technology can be quite clever at delivering that. But I will get Robert to message you about that. I would like to run another video now, and this is an interview I conducted with the author or co-author of a recent report from Ember, which has actually been getting quite a lot of publicity about electrification. And there's some really good news in this report. There's a lot of doom and gloom out there at the moment, especially with climate change, which really does worry me. I'm very worried about amok at the moment, but there is good news as well. And let's just relish a bit of good news just for 5 minutes.
Yeah, so our report analyzed the changes in electricity generation in 2025 and over the last 2 decades. And we found that the increase in solar and wind power and clean power sources as a whole has now risen to a level that's large enough to meet all of the increase in electricity demand. So in 2025, electricity demand rose by 849 terawatt hours and clean power sources rose by 887 terawatt hours. And that means we had a small decline of fossil generation as a result. So we had this drop of 0.2% in fossil generation. Now, we've seen drops in fossil generation before, but the big difference in 2025 is that it was a year with pretty robust demand growth, actually above the 10-year average. And we've seen fossil generation falls in, for example, 2009 during the global financial crisis, in 2020 during the COVID pandemic. But those were years where demand growth was very low, or we actually had declines in demand because of the economic situation. And that's where 2025 is really different, because it was a year of robust demand growth, and we still saw a fall in fossil generation because of that rise in renewables. And a lot of that increase is driven by solar power. So solar alone met 3/4 of the increase in electricity demand in 2025.
Okay, thank you for that. In percentage terms, though, it seems to me it's even more impressive than that, because the increase in solar from 2024 to 25 was 29.7%. Wind, it was 8.2%, and yet electricity increase was just 2.8%. So if that trajectory continues, then the gap between the increase in wind and solar and the increase in electricity is just going to get broader, I assume.
Yeah, so there's the short-term trend when we're looking at the absolute, so the terawatt hours, and that's where we now see clean power drawing level with electricity demand growth. But as you point out, in the growth rates, clean power is actually growing significantly faster, particularly solar power and wind power. And that means as they continue to scale and maintain high growth rates, we're not just going to see them meet new demand, but exceed new demand in the years to come. Solar power is the particular standout here. We saw an increase of 30% in 2025, and that 30% growth rate was the highest rate of growth in 8 years. Now, that might not be particularly surprising to some people, but usually when you see a technology scale and mature in the market, what we would expect is that even though absolute growth remains high, we usually expect growth rates to gradually come down. And the fact that solar has been able to maintain a 30% growth rate, well, actually over the last 10 years, it was an average of 27%. So the 30% really stands out. The fact that it's been able to maintain that means that its role in the power sector is continuing to grow at this exponential rate. And we're now at a level where it's overtaken wind power for the first time ever. And it's reached close to nuclear power. And we expect both solar and wind individually to overtake nuclear power in 2026 as well.
Okay, thank you for that. And so looking at the breakdown in the report, looking at worldwide, it's got 43% of the share of electricity, global electricity generation was clean. But 34% of that was renewables. So can you just explain what the difference is there? So there's of that clean energy, 9% wasn't renewables. So what would that be?
So the distinction between, on the one hand, we have clean power, or sometimes called low carbon power. that includes both renewables and nuclear generation. So that 43% includes both sources like solar, wind, and hydro, which are typically classed as renewable, and then also nuclear generation, which still makes up about 9% of the global electricity mix, although the share of nuclear generation has been gradually falling, despite having some minor amounts of absolute growth, because the pace of the power sector growth as a whole, so electricity demand as a whole, has been growing faster than nuclear power. So while it's been losing a little bit of market share, the growth in wind and solar power has been so fast that it's compensated for that fall in nuclear share. And we've now seen clean power rise to 43%, while it only crossed 40% in 2024. So we see the shares of clean power accelerate in the mix pretty rapidly.
Okay, so just to reiterate that, it's gone from 40% share to a 43% share in 12 months.
Yeah, so we had that crossover point to reach over 40% in 2024, and then now we're already at 43%. And similarly, it's been relatively recent that we reached 30% for renewables, so that smaller group of solar, wind, and hydro together. So the fact that we're now at 34% there as well is a big step up, and we do expect this share to grow by about at least 3% in the coming years as well per year. So we're going to see higher and higher shares, and it's not going to be too many years before we reach the parity between clean power sources and fossil sources in an even split in the power sector.
Well, I hope that was useful. Now, you join me with the disastrous news that I just dropped a blueberry on the floor, so I don't know if I'm going to recover from that blow. But before we pack up today, Iggy, can we just touch ever so slightly about AI and sustainability, and in particular data centers? Now, I know when the Chinese DeepSeek came out a couple of years ago, everyone was saying, yeah, but DeepSeek makes far more efficient use of electricity. Where are we going at the moment with that? Is there an indication that that the LMs are making more efficient use of electricity, or is they as hungry for power as ever?
Well, when it comes to data centers, there's a few things to keep in mind. There's a huge difference between an data center who does work for AI, who they use for AI, and a normal data center that we've been having around for many decades. Normal data centers have loose and coupled computers and servers, and they work on and off. Where a big data center, they can have 30,000 Colossus that's 100,000 GPUs that's connected to each other that functions as one. And that presents one of the problems to renewable energy, because you need a stable stack behind that, something that's inertia driven, just in the way that it works. So because that whole data center as a whole can spike, it can go from nothing to something in a millisecond, and it can fall and go up and down, and you need inertia behind that. So we do not have enough power to actually drive these big data centers. There's a rush to be able to develop, which is also why there's that interesting thing about space. They want to put stuff in space because we can only get the type of power that can drive the AI data centers at the pace that it is currently. The other thing is to keep in mind, and you ask about the sustainability, is we sit with a major risk. Countries look at this as a major risk in not developing quick enough with AI, because you have these superpowers that are developing, so you have the risk of falling behind. I can't see them slowing down. They will move forward at pace, whether or not it is good or bad. I cannot see them making another decision.
But I think also one of the good news in that Ember report was, despite the massive increase in electricity used for AI, nonetheless,
Yes,
the growth in electricity overall, renewables are now outpacing it. And I think that's going to happen. And also, yeah, AI uses a lot of water. But then the flip side of that is when we're talking about vertical farms earlier, this is we discussed this a bit later on in the interview, and I'll be running that probably next week. They make a phenomenally more efficient use of water than a traditional farm. So it swings and roundabouts, I suppose. I wonder, why don't we just have data centers in the Arctic or something, right? Really cold, so we don't worry about keep service cold.
They have. Iceland has got really good, and I mean, Iceland's got a huge amount of renewable energy that they also have. So their data centers are quite efficient. It really depends where it's economically viable, and I presume we're going back to risk. It depends what that country. If we look at, the superpowers between America and China, I can't see them allowing their data centers to be too far away from their mainlands. Just pure risk, because you don't want to have infrastructure built and then something happens to it. But there's a lot of research around the data centers in the ocean. That's an obvious place to put it. But like I said, they're going to make decisions that is going to be in their favor and it's less risk.
All right. Okay, Iggy, look, thank you very much. Iggy's going to be back on Sustainably Talking probably next week, I think.
Yeah.
And there's so much more we can talk about. We've talked about a quarter of what we were planning to talk about today. And in terms of the virtual farms, the vertical farms and the Ember report, I will be running further extracts from those interviews in future shows, but I will be putting the full interviews up as well. But thank you very much for joining us. Next week, we're back on Tuesday when we have an expert on the ocean on the show and an ESG, someone who's been a regular on the ESG show, Robin Boosted, who is also mapping the Himalayas. So we're hearing from the Himalayas and the ocean on Tuesday. But anyway, thank you for joining us and see you next week.